Welcome to the Redeeming Stories podcast, a space for honest conversations about healing, truth telling, and the ways we come back to ourselves and to each other after surviving what once felt unbearable. I'm your host, Julie M. Lane from Redeem Thyself in 7 Petals, where we explore healing as something deeply human, not rushed, not perfected, but lived through presence, connection, and intention. Today, I'm joined by an artist and emotional wellness mentor from the United Kingdom, Nesha. She is the creator behind Nesha Canvas Creations and the Vulnerable Voices podcast. Her work centers on healing through art, vulnerability, and connection. Through painting workshops, fingerprint tree canvases, affirmations, community events, and our podcast, she creates safe spaces for people of all ages to reconnect with creativity and joy, especially those navigating mental health challenges. Her work is rooted not only in lived experience, but also in science and psychology-backed research that shows how creativity and vulnerability support emotional regulation, co-regulation, and overall well-being. After being pulled back from the brink of suicide by art, therapy, holistic healing, and deep self-awareness, she felt called to extend the same lifeline to others, to remind them they are not alone. Their feelings are valid, and healing is possible with the right support. In today's conversation, we'll explore creativity as survival, vulnerability as strength, and how healing comes possible when we allow ourselves to feel human together. This is the Redeeming Stories podcast, and today we're talking about art, honesty, and the power of being seen. Nesha, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was actually so beautiful to hear that back. So thank you for so much for doing that justice. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's just start off by how you've shared that art pulled you back from the brink of suicide. How feel free to share what you would are comfortable doing so, but would you be willing to talk about what that creativity offered in that moment in your life and why it became something you couldn't keep to yourself?
Of course. One thing I want to mention is talking about suicide and the stigma around it. It's still there, but I'm here to sort of break that silence as well. So I really appreciate spaces like this. So I'm 31 now, but when I was in my early 20s, around 21, between 21 and 23, I was at my lowest point. I almost took my own life. And that was before that years of being bullied since the age of 9, never feeling like I fit in. I was ridiculed for my appearance, my darker skin, my height, just the way I learned and my education. And I think throughout my whole life, I've just always been very highly anxious, given all the trauma that I've been through and different environments I've been in, forming unhealthy habits like people pleasing, being the chameleon to try and fit in, and actually being really inauthentic with myself, not knowing who I actually was, what I valued, and not being guided to understand what was right for me and what wasn't, because I was trying to be everyone. So that was years of being bullied at school. I skipped a lot of school because I hated being there. I felt really lonely. Lonely in the sense of mind loneliness, spiritual loneliness, physical loneliness, just to feel seen. Anyone to ask me the question, "Are you okay? Like, what's really going on? Or can we help you?" And so finished school, and then I again similarly went through isolation, not knowing where I fit in different social groups. I was bullied at work. I had a really traumatic end to a relationship after university. So I was about 19, 20, 21. That relationship throughout was very volatile, was up and down. Emotionally, not as safe in a lot of aspects. And so when I had graduated uni, I started feeling my lowest point of suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts. It was the only thing that kept running through my mind. And I could vividly imagine how, when, and, the freedom that would come with it. And that was started at around 21. And then a few years later, you sort of battle through, you go, do you know what, I'll keep going. But then having a step back again, I felt suicidal again. I just came back to the thought of I just felt more free not being here than being here. And it was that night that I decided to not be here, that I actually decided to reach out to someone who I had connected with very randomly a year after I finished university. And that was to celebrate my friend's graduation. And we bumped into each other in a club. And some kind of connection happened there. I don't know what it was, a soul connection, but there was a very highly spiritual, grounded kind of individual that almost as if they had an old soul that had this life experience that could guide me in that moment. So that night I decided to not be here. I reached out, and this was through Instagram DM. And I just said, how do you get out of a low place? How do you balance these energies? So I'm just not sure. And all they did was send me a guided meditation. They they showed up for me when I needed it. They didn't ignore my message, they responded. And that meditation was on YouTube, and that meditation takes you through your inner child. It takes you back to when you were 3 or 4, and they start getting you to visualize that person, how you'd hold them, what you'd say to them, keeping them safe. And I remember just crying. I cried throughout the whole thing. And the next day, I had fallen asleep listening to it, and the next day I woke up. I had almost like a calling or an urge to paint, and I don't know why I was painting. It was this unopened pack of paints I had when we were younger, and we always used to joke at home. And I was like, who's left these? Whose are these? Who's ever going to use these? And they were my mum. She's always been creative, and they were my mum's. And I opened it that day. I I decided to not ignore the calling. I opened it, and on a piece of paper, I sat on the floor in the corner of our living room with the armchair near me, and I painted this Buddha. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why it was a Buddha, but all the feeling that I needed was peace and tranquility and just something to turn off my mind. My mind was just constantly chattering and really going through all the trauma I had been through. And so in that moment of painting, that chatter just stopped. It gave me a sense of joy again that I hadn't felt for so long. And it wasn't forced joy, it was a natural connection back to joy. And I was just, for 8 hours on the floor painting. And it it just gave me a sense of hope again that there's something I'm good at, there's something that I enjoy again. And so I didn't stop painting after that. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Um, it's I've shared with you, I've had 2 families members take, their own lives, and I was a child when one happened, and the other happened about 4 or 5 years ago, and as much of the trauma and abuse I've been through, I've never brought myself to that place. I think primarily because of my daughters. My daughters have always been my focal point, and I'm very, very close to them, and they're both just a little bit older than you are. And having that role as a mother and the relationship I have with them, I think is what kept me from ever going to that place. And I was thinking about that along with the wise words, regardless of our spiritual lives, how those wise words from that spiritual place that we each come from can guide us to a new direction. So, Nisha, I'm curious. You'd mentioned, your spiritual life. How has that helped to play into your journey?
Mm. It's a great question. And I think people think spirituality or your spirit is this massive concept or this massive thing, but actually it's just an alignment with yourself, and that alignment is like your values. What do you really value? So my top values are loyalty, respect, honesty, creativity, and it's really aligning with that. So then your spirit, your soul almost just feels safe because they're working in unison with who you're actually meant to be and who you're meant to surround yourself with as well. And you can feel it. You can feel the nervousness or your body reacting when you're not safe. And so for me, that spiritual calling was just art was safe for me. It was that huge safety I needed by myself initially to kind of process everything. It was all the stuff from my head coming out onto something. And I needed to do that by myself. Everyone's different. Some people might need to speak to someone and actually verbalize it. I needed to process it through an act of doing to make my brain stop and think and actually reconnect to joy and my inner child. And art is considered a spiritual practice because in our culture, there's a term called samadhi, and that actually means a deep state of absorption or higher consciousness that just gives us like full presence in what we're doing. And so we forget about time, we forget about lots of things. We're so focused, just like a child is. And so it's that connection to just energy that's more conscious and bigger than us that actually is in alignment with who we are. So the concept, spirituality or your spirit, is actually really simple. It's your values, it's what you enjoy, it's just really thinking about what you loved when you were younger.
Wow. As you were sharing that, that really touched me because I'm reconnecting with my music. Um, after having an incredibly successful career, needing to leave the music industry, and I'm just now sitting back down to my harp again. And I often tell people that it was my music that nobody could take away from me, that it was mine, it's in my soul. And so I say those words, but they don't really resonate. But yet, as you were talking and I was thinking about my music, they started to resonate. So, thank you. I needed to hear that today. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
So, Nisha, when you talk about your work centering around vulnerability, what have you learned about how being seen, both honestly and safely? How does that support your healing in ways isolation never could?
That's a really, really good question. It's been the scariest journey, I think, feeling seen again. I think, given my experience of being bullied and judged and looked at for the wrong reasons, it's taken me like 10 years or so to fully now step into wanting to be seen and heard and be looked at, but looked at for a way that's like purpose driven, looked at for a way that's passion driven. It's something that's for the collective. It's not just a self-serving thing. It's actually giving back to a community as well. So I think the vulnerability aspect for me, it felt really exposing to be out there again and sharing, even sharing some of my artwork, because that's my inner world. And we often find as humanity, we don't often share our inner world. Everything's always good. Everything's fine. Everything's, yeah, we'll manage. But but with that, the exposure to your inner world and to know that you're going to get judged. I've learned that regardless, whether you're doing something amazing or you're doing something that you love, enjoy, or you're just happy doing day to day, and that's fine. People are going to judge you regardless. So you might as well just get out there and just keep doing what you love and what you enjoy. And then you start attracting the right people. So then you don't feel so unsafe because the people you then attract once you start healing the trauma, the conditioning around feeling not good enough or not worthy or you don't belong on that pedestal, actually the people then you surround yourself with, that energy attracts like for like. You're then not scared because people want you to be seen and they celebrate you for that. So Isolating for a little while helped me to process and kind of really just hone in on connecting with myself again and my spirit. And that was through art and just kind of journaling a few bits. And then I had to take accountability to overcome some of my fears and go, I'm going to rewrite the script now because I'm tired of this old identity. It isn't me. That's something that was passed down or given to me or I developed because of my trauma. So, yeah, it's been a lot of accountability for me to go, I in order for me to make a change and feel better about myself and be in the place that I want to be and the purpose of which I'm here, I need to slowly do things to be in those environments, and sit with that uncomfortable feeling. I say it all the time. That's why I also do the Vulnerable Voices podcast. It's getting uncomfortable with like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable so that we can move forward and be free. So yeah, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. I say it seems I think over a decade, but I'm really proud of where I've got to. So vulnerability is a strength. I always say this.
Thank you. It's that those words that my therapist tells me, act as if. She's constantly saying act as if and putting myself out there, and knowing that I have the right to turn around and leave if I don't feel safe, that I'm allowed to leave. And knowing that now, um, has helped me act as if to start putting myself back out there again in social settings. Work, I'm fine. I'm fine at work because I can hide it all. But socially, it's really still very, very hard for me. Talk a bit, Nisha, about the research base. As you know, I've been a university professor. I'm always looking at research for my own areas of interest to support families that are on a journey. But talk about how research based with art therapy, um, and the sciences fall into this creativity support, emotional regulation, co regulation, for people who are struggling with mental health.
No, thank you. So I became quite curious about the benefits of art and mental health, mainly because of my own journey and going, actually, if something in my brain could help me in my lowest point, there must be something to it. I've always been quite curious and I needed to know why of certain things. And also, I find a lot of people don't invest in like these kind of healing therapies and methods unless there's something to prove that it works. People don't really freely try things as much. We're quite reserved because we're quite used to quick fixes. So, these therapies, they take time as well. And we lack time given corporate worlds and the fast-paced environments that we're in. But I took a lot of time to research and really look at like legitimate websites because there's so much rubbish out there, but I wanted legitimate websites. So things like the World Health Organization, the PubMeds, the NHS websites, certain like legitimate charities as well that are, registered and well known as well, looking at their reports, looking at their sort of statistics and research or even live research on people. And so there have been many articles where they talk about the neuroplasticity in our brain, and basically it's activating the right side of our brain when we're doing art specifically, and that's related to creativity and our emotions, which often humanity we've learned to sort of just lean into the left side, which is just overly analytical. Everything fits into a box. Emotions have to fit into a box, which they don't. But we've been conditioned to go, this, and this makes sense. So that's why I'm feeling this, rather than just going, this is a feeling, I'm going to sit and process it. So art has been shown to activate that right side of the brain. And then also when you're doing art, you feel it's like a positive distraction. So it kind of calms the mind, calms the nervous system. And then there've actually been studies that show the reward system in our brain lights up when we're doing creativity. So it's actually reacting to the thing that we're doing. It's actually giving us that healthy dopamine that we need. And then with my workshops, I tie in the affirmations, which then also strengthens our ability to rewire our brain. And that there's been a lot of research around, and they've actually shown little diagrams of new pathways being made, and it lights up and it starts creating new ones, just like a child when they're learning something new. But this is then the neuroplasticity is like our brain is able to rewire itself. We can do it, but with practice. And so I started being really curious about these articles. I was like, there is real research, and I want to do a live study myself at some point. I would love to do that and see what lights up. Um, but now I'm on a mission to not only just host workshops, it's hosting with education, the whys behind it. This works. This is my lived experience as well. It's not just come and paint and do the same thing as everyone else, because actually we're not using and utilizing our powerful brains as we should be or can be. So I've adapted my workshops to kind of angle it from an educational standpoint so that people can come away from the workshop and either carry on themselves, or they can keep coming back and keep learning and keep reintegrating what I'm teaching and feel good about themselves. It's you come to a workshop, you play, you have fun, you process and you feel calm. The affirmations, you build tools to then be able to face challenges in life. So I actually had this feedback from someone today about a workshop I did in December last year. And they said the affirmation they wrote about, I deserve to make time for myself. Months later, they've messaged me to say that affirmation I wrote from your workshop was a catalyst for my growth. I keep remembering that. It's powerful. It works. There is lived people coming to these workshops and saying the truth about what's happening to them. So yeah, I love the research side, and who knows, it could develop into something. So maybe schools having more mental health mentors and advocates and creative people to come in and teach, um, just so that they can feel better equipped to handle life, coming back to art and the affirmation. So yeah.
I love that idea of having a space at a university, at a, a large, corporate office, just a space where art can take place when you need to unwind and refocus. Your story, Nisha, also reminds me of a gal that I did a radio interview with her out of Melbourne, Australia. She's an art therapist. And I think I need to connect you two, because you're so much on the same page. But as you were talking, her message that was ringing in my head is you don't have to be an artist to do this. You don't have to be able to draw well. You can just do brush strokes back and forth. Do you find people that come think, I can't do this, I can't draw?
Yeah, all the time. You mentioned you've got a workshop in art, and they're like, I'm not creative. Oh gosh, I'm terrible at, like, we put ourselves down before we even tried. And so this is the challenge as well that I'm trying to make not a challenge anymore, is actually for us to get out of our comfort zone with art. You know, like a child, you give them a blank canvas and they're freely just doing whatever because they feel their way through it. They're not there to make a perfect piece of artwork or draw within the lines perfectly. It's actually encouraged us to, we have a baseline for my workshop, some ideas that get thrown, we get talking and things like that. But every canvas, for me, the achievement is every canvas should look individual to the person that's come, rather than having all the same. And I started off doing all the same just to kind of learn and how to teach and stuff. But then encouraging, like, do you know what? If you don't want to use green for your peacock and you want to use pink feathers because you love that, like a child would just love picking their own colors, that gives you the confidence to be who you are, an individual. So I think people are very reserved because it's just something that's out of practice. And even doodling on a page that's art. Drawing a stick man is art. Folding a piece of paper into an aeroplane is art. Art is anything you create yourself and feel proud of. So yes, to anyone listening, please just give it a go. It's about having fun and playing again. So, no, you don't need to be an artist. I wasn't. I taught myself through making mistakes and doing random stuff. Um, but yeah, we talk ourselves out of things that we're maybe scared of or just out of practice. So, I encourage anyone to give it a go.
Thank you, Nisha. Um, so through therapy, holistic healing, and the accountability piece, you felt called to help others. I've lived that feeling of being called to help others throughout my career in special education. So, what was that moment you realized your healing wasn't just for you, but it was in service to others?
I don't think I had a specific, like, one moment. I think there were so many moments where I'd been painting myself and then just enjoying it and sharing it on my social media before I even created my official account. Um, and just sharing it through sharing some of the art I've done for fun, for play, and people's curiosity and engagement with it, and it just bringing them joy. It just twigs something that, okay, I could start off by sharing my art. If people want to enjoy it, then they can, have a commission artwork from me and feel the same sense of joy looking at it in their homes. And that's how I started. And then yeah, talking to people and stuff. You know, I would love if you did a workshop, I'd love to come along. Or, you know, I haven't done art in over 10 years. I haven't picked up a paintbrush. If you did something, I would love to. And just knowing how much has helped me and I think I've always been an unofficial therapist for people my whole life. Um, Being a good listener, empathetic, I can validate people's emotions naturally. It just made sense. And then I thought last year, I thought I'm going to give it a go. And it just, it, the joy from a group, the energy, the shared stories, the empathy through sharing our affirmations, it's just invaluable. It beats any commission in the whole world. Um, and I think feeling alone most of my life, I just don't want anyone else to feel alone at all. Um, I almost want to save people if I can, if they're willing to or want to take part, because it's a choice. You have a choice. Um, I think I've always just been very caring. I always used to say this thing growing up. I have a lot of love to give, and I didn't know what capacity, but I think I found it.
That's wonderful, Nisha. For someone who's listening today and they feel like suicide's their only way out, their only option, their only way to heal and not hurt anymore, what would you want them to hear from you from one human to another?
So many things I'd want for them to hear. Um, right now, what's coming to me is a question, which I think I asked myself when I was at that low point, is what's still keeping me here? What's stopping me from having done it already if I had been thinking about it for so long and thinking about whether I do have anywhere, anyone at all, professional, personal, that I could be brave enough to just extend a small reach out. Um, I think also that everyone deserves to be here and just remind them that they do too. And there there are people that see them and want them to stay. So I think those things come to mind right now. It could be situational, it could be environmental where you are. Like you kind of have to navigate in the moment, but just off the top of my head is what's still keeping you here. There must be something that there's some kind of hope. Um, and then trying to encourage to reach out to speak to someone. And it's when you offload or when you feel someone's carrying that with you, those thoughts sort of can ease a little bit. It is a journey, but it's brave enough to do that in the first place. So I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. Nisha, we've covered a lot of ground today. As we wrap up our time together, is there anything else you would like our listeners to hear?
Just that everyone here deserves to be here, and that we are born to be creative. It's our birthright. We have been conditioned to think that we need to be a certain way and do certain things, but joy in our inner child and play is something that will get you through a lot of things. And just everyone deserves a place here in whatever capacity. Just be kind to one another, please.
Nisha, thank you. Absolutely. As we close our conversation with Nisha today, I'm reminded about healing rarely happens in isolation. It happens in spaces where we can be honest with ourselves, where we are welcomed, and where creativity is allowed to speak when words fall short. Our conversation today reflects on the heart of Redeem Thyself, that redemption is not about erasing pain, but about reclaiming our humanity within it, choosing connection over silence and compassion over shame. And through the rhythm of seven puddles, we're reminded that forward movement doesn't have to be loud or linear. Sometimes it looks like a brushstroke, a shared story, or just the courage to say, I am still here. If you're listening and struggling, let this be a reminder. What you're feeling is valid. Support exists, and you do not have to carry this alone. Thank you, Nisha, for your courage, your vulnerability, and the spaces you create for others to feel human again. And thank you to our listeners for holding space with us. Until next time, this is the Redeeming Stories podcast. May you continue moving forward gently, intentionally, and together.